Hello and welcome to another EstablishTheRun.com screencast. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the co-founders here at ETR, and today, as promised, I will be reviewing the winning lineup from the Week 16 contest we had on DraftKings. I'll also be reviewing one of my GPP lineups from this contest. While you're here, be sure to hit subscribe, click the notification bell. That way you'll know when we put new videos up. They'll always be free. And once the offseason hits, we plan on posting really a bunch of videos on coaching changes and the draft and free agency and OTA season, et cetera, everything that Evan Silva's really good at, everything to get us fully prepared for the next NFL season. But as for today, the goal, of course, is to talk about some strategies, try to learn from some lineups, and just get better. So let's get into it. Week 16 contest here on DraftKings was 3,000 entries, $3 to get in. 3 entry max, rake free, thanks to our friends at DraftKings. Quick look at the payout structure. Again, very flat at the top, same as last week. $5,500 out of the $9,000 prize pool, aka 61%, goes to the top 10 spots. And there's really no money, in finishing outside of the top 15 or so. It's all pretty similar. So because the difference between 81st place and 9,000 place is only $8, our strategy should shift a little bit. More Ricky Bobby, more correlation, first or last, ramp up the variance. We still want to have floors in all of our plays. Something that, I ignored in frustrating fashion, which I'll get to in a bit. But yeah, so anyways, going to look at the winning lineup here. Going to talk through one of my lineups, which I also played in the 1,500 buy-in on DraftKings. Hope you guys find it helpful. So the winner was Kellen Taylor, just massive score of 259.94. That actually would have been enough to win the $1,500 buy-in this week by 10 points. So I think a big question of the week was, does Andy Dalton have enough of a ceiling to win a GPP? Because we know that Dolphins games create tournament-winning situations. Ryan Fitzpatrick is so aggressive and so perfect for fantasy, and the Dolphins defense is among the worst in the NFL in literally every category. But with Tyler Boyd and Alex Erickson and Tyler Eifert and CJ Zoma as weapons for Andy Dalton, could he take advantage of this situation against Miami? Does he really have 396 yards and 4 touchdowns in his range? The key, I think, for Andy Dalton and really for this team was projecting a new role for John Ross. John Ross is a legit game breaker. You see what's happened to the offenses of the Eagles and the Texans without Deshaun Watson, without Deshaun Jackson, without Will Fuller. It makes a huge difference. So, John Ross is one of the fastest players in the NFL. He only played, he's been out for so long. He only played a bit role in his return from injury in week 14. And then in week 15, he played a little bit more, but still not enough. He was behind Alex Erickson. So to play him in week 16, one of the questions was, would they unleash him against the Dolphins? And at 4,200, it was clearly a leap worth taking. Gives Andy Dalton a dimension he so desperately needs. So Kellen Taylor went with Andy Dalton, Tyler Boyd, John Ross, and then brought it back with Devontae Parker. And note that this stack was all just really solid plays. I actually did think Andy Dalton was in play for cash. Same with Boyd and Parker. And honestly, for Ross, I ended up playing Greg Ward in cash. I thought Larry Fitzgerald was in play at 4,200 also. But if you thought that John Ross's role was going to take that step forward, he was certainly fine as well. So, no really thin plays, no really low floor plays. And the ownership didn't get out of control on these guys. And maybe because of the wind, so many people were talking about, it's 15 to 20 mile an hour winds in Miami. I think I've stated my takes on weather here more than enough for one season, but it's just really hard to project in a vacuum, when it's not extreme. And 15 to 20 mile an hour winds, whether they're sustained or not is up for debate, I think, based on some of these weather metrics. And it obviously did not affect this game at all because this game went completely ham. At running back, Kellen Taylor went with 2 mid-price guys in excellent spots. Devontae Freeman home against the Jaguars, Philip Lindsay home against the Lions. Note that he didn't play either of the chalk backups. In other words, he decided to ignore DeAndre Washington, who had a new role with Josh Jacobs out, and he decided to ignore Dion Lewis, who had a new role with Derrick Henry out. And I think that was probably right for tournaments, given how strong of running back plays we had in the mid-range. DeAndre Washington ended up 52% owned in this. Dion Lewis was 31% owned. How often can we beat them with Lindsey or Freeman or Melvin Gordon or Joe Mixon or Miles Sanders or Adrian Peterson, etc.? And another thing that, when you fade both of those really high-owned, cheap running backs, what it does is it puts you on a different lineup construction. Most lineups, the standard lineup construction was to pay down real low at running back, pay up high at wide receiver and quarterback, Julio, Michael Thomas, Lamar Jackson, etc. But by spending more at running back, you just naturally get a unique construction. Something that's worth mentioning. Dallas Goddard play that Kellen made is really interesting. It just creates a ton of leverage, right? Because first of all, we knew that Austin Hooper would be massively owned. Austin Hooper was 4,400. Dallas Goddard was 4,100. And so Hooper ends up 32% owned. Dallas Goddard 5.6. We also knew that Zach Ertz will be very popular. He was 19% owned in this. So you have price point leverage with Goddard beating Hooper. And then you have in-team leverage. Goddard getting the touchdowns instead of Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz hurt his ribs in this game, but either way, Goddard still had passed outscoring him. I think it's, a bit fortunate for both of those things to happen. Goddard outscoring both Hooper and Ertz. But that's what leverage is. When it does happen, when Goddard does outscore both of them, you are rewarded in a big, big way. In other words, maximizing the reward when you're right, I think it is an important way to think about things, especially given how often we're wrong when trying to predict what will happen on Sundays. Michael Thomas, obviously a standout play at 9,300. And then the real key here was Colts defense. And look, it's frustrating and even disheartening at times, but if a defense goes for 30 points and you don't have it, then your GPP day is just over. You can't win. And I get that sucks for a week to come down to defense and you're just drawing dead right out of the gate if you don't have Colts defense. And defense is extremely variant, special teams and defensive touchdowns are really fluky, lucky, difficult, impossible to project. But just is what it is. And, honestly, Colts D was obviously strong. Will Grier was so bad in preseason. There was a reason that they didn't put in Will Grier instead of Kyle Allen while Kyle Allen was struggling. So if the Colts get a lead and Will Grier is forced into a lot of dropbacks, well, you see what happens. 5 sacks, 3 interceptions, 2 touchdowns. They were both punt returns, but still, So great team there from Kellen Taylor. Like it a lot. Let's go to 719th place. And that is me, your humble narrator. So I put these 3 lineups in the 1500 on DK, none cash, which was, of course, #bad, but at least this one had a shot. So the idea with this lineup was to maximize what I thought was one of the best players on the slate in Julio Jones. And I thought that by playing him with Matt Ryan and Christian Blake and Chris Conley would create a contrarian stack that included Julio Jones. Obviously, Ryan to Julio was going to be popular. In week 15, Christian Blake ran the second most routes on the team. He only saw 1 target, though, but he was playing that Calvin Ridley role. So I thought that was enough at 3,100 to project some outcomes where he sees, 5 to 8 targets. In hindsight, of course, the floor here is just too low, right? So even if Christian Blake is secure in the Ridley role, we've already seen a floor of 0 for Christian Blake. And honestly, that's just bad to take on, and I know better, and it's just bad to take on, particularly in a tournament with only 3,000 entries. Maybe you can make a better case for it in something like the $20 Millie Maker where there's, 300,000 entries. But the correlation play I made here did work to some extent. I think Ryan and Julio were unlucky to not combine for more touchdowns, to not just have an absolutely monstrous game. And then in garbage time, we got the Chris Conley touchdown bomb. So I think it worked to some degree. The other play I really wanted to make was Saquon Barkley with Giants defense. And I knew that Saquon would be underowned due to his price. But, they just keep healthy scratching Wayne Gallman every week. So we have an every down running back, literally every snap against the Redskins with Daniel Jones at quarterback. And Daniel Jones just, you can say what you want about Daniel Jones and the turnovers and everything. He moves the offense ever since preseason, ever since he stepped on the field. He just moves the offense really well. And so then pairing Saquon with Giants defense against really mistake-prone Dwayne Haskins, I knew they'd be low-owned too. I thought that was pretty good because I expected the Redskins defense at the exact same price as the Giants to be pretty owned, which they were. At tight end, I really wanted to get off Austin Hooper. Just massive chalk. Austin Hooper was just such a lock for cash, and Austin Hooper was an awesome play, but chalk tight end just isn't typically going to be right in tournaments, considering how touchdown dependent most of them are. So Jared Cook was a pay up to be contrarian play. He was a little bit overpriced at 5,000, but he's been playing really, really well lately and lining up at wide receiver a ton and seeing a really deep ADOT, almost like a wide receiver who goes deep a lot. So absolutely love to get him at 2.4%. Hope he outscores Hooper and Ertz, which he did. So I was really happy with that play. The play that ended up being the most frustrating for me was Amari Cooper. Against the Eagles in this NFC Championship game, I did not think Amari Cooper getting rotated out in favor of Tavon Austin was even in the range of possible outcomes. Really didn't. I didn't think that him not being able to separate from Ronald Darby and Jalen Mills was possible. But maybe Amari's just more hurt than I suspected, even though he wasn't on the injury report. And it's frustrating because I really, really liked Devontae Parker at the same price. Devontae Parker ended up less owned at the same price. So really frustrating there. Could have had Miles Sanders too. So just a miss on Amari. And, when that happens, you're not going to cash. Melvin Gordon play, just a running back who fit, just like Kellen Taylor, I wanted to avoid Dion Lewis and mostly avoid DeAndre Washington. I played D-Wash on one of these teams and Dion Lewis on 0. I could have gone Devontae Freeman here instead of Melvin Gordon, I think. And maybe I should have, tried to soak up all of the Falcons' touchdowns in a spot I really like them in. And then also, there's fine correlation between Matt Ryan and Devontae Freeman. I mean, obviously, Devontae Freeman plays very well in the pass game. So maybe that was a mistake there, not going Devontae over Melvin Gordon and maybe getting out of the Christian Blake play because I already would have had Ryan and Julio and Devontae. So frustrating results for me in tournaments this week. Think I had some mistakes that, and I was never going to place high with Blake or Giants defense. But sometimes, that's just the way it goes. All right. Thanks for checking out this review. Feel free to drop any comments or questions below. We will be doing our full content and establish the run through week 17 through the playoffs. Use promo code ETR20 for 20% off any weekly or monthly purchase. I will drop a link in the description below. So, for my dog Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.